Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching fourth and final part of What If Naruto Found Legendary Sword of Heroes. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Fire Country. Ruins, Border Kiba exclaimed, "Wow," in amazement at the jutsu power that had just been demonstrated. Sakura leaned against their makeshift cover and remarked, "That jutsu's level has to be on par with Naruto's chakra shuriken and Yugito's lightning monster jutsu." Yamato said, "Actually it is, to get her attention. Konohamaru.san has been experimenting with infusing fire elemental manipulation directly into the Rasengan, but I had no idea he had progressed to stage 5 so quickly, especially considering how difficult it is to control chakra and elemental manipulation at the same time." With a suspicious glance at the Anbu captain, Neji questioned, "That jutsu must have been using the fire element instead of Naruto's wind element. You said that was stage 5. How many stages are there?" Yamato responded by nodding in the direction where Kakuzu had been standing. "There are 6 stages, and what you just saw was an unrefined version of stage 5. Kiba gasped, "Are you telling us that jutsu just now was flawed?" When Yamato said, "That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm going to go and get the brat," Anko declared as he got up. "Be careful not to get in their way," Yamato said, nodding. As Naruto placed Konohamaru on the ground, he asked feebly, "Did I do good, Nissan?" The Konoha grinned and said, "You did great, Konohamaru. I'm proud of you," as the boy appeared to lose consciousness. "His chakra is depleted. It's nothing serious, but he'll be out for a while," Yugito said, placing her hands over him and connecting with her chakra. As he turned to face Akatsuki, Naruto asked her, "Is something wrong?" Both of his arms suffered serious burn damage. The outer layer of the skin on his hands had melted. "I've repaired the damage, but if he keeps using that jutsu, then eventually the damage will exceed my ability to heal it," she said, appearing hesitant for a moment before responding. "I should have known something like this would happen," Naruto said, shaking his head in remembrance of the damage to his arm sustained during his first use of stage 5 of the Rasengan. With a "Hey guys!" shout, Anko leapt down next to them. Taking her glowing green hands away from the genin, Yugito said, "Anko, can you take Konohamaru.kun to the others for us?" The snake Jonin replied, "That's what I came over here for," as she lifted the young Sarutobi. "Take good care of him," Naruto directed her. After nodding and saying, "Good luck you too," Anko quickly sped off in the direction of the others. Yugito asked, "Hey, where's the other guy? You know that puppet guy? I know he was here a moment ago," after noticing that there were now only 3 Akatsuki members. Naruto gave a nod. "He must have slipped away when Konohamaru landed his jutsu. How about we get rid of another one before tackling the remaining 2? "Alright," added Yugito. "Let's go wild," Naruto said with a smile and a sea of his hands. It was Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, and 2 clones appeared next to the Konoha Jonin. Whispering, "Now what?" Hidan scowled at the 2 blondes. When Itachi saw Naruto and his clones perform a move resembling the one the Sarutobi boy had performed earlier, he narrowed his eyes and asked, "Are you going to use the same move that child did? Why would you?" The fact that something so compact and fast spinning can only be used if the user holds it like a weapon is its weakness, which I already knew from my one and only encounter. The air was suddenly filled with a bell-like screech that seemed to reverberate and deafen everyone in the vicinity. As the clones worked to pour the chakra and elemental power into a single, continuous ball of energy and wind, Naruto held out his hand, forcing almost everyone to cover their ears. When he extended the sphere away from his body, the wind blades grew into the shape of a shuriken, and 4 tiny blades spun around the ball. He said, "Futon. Rasen Shuriken, the name." Itachi thought, "That is a really monstrous jutsu," as the power it radiated was identical to the one the previous boy had used, and even he shuddered. When Yugito raised her hand to the sky, the local temperature abruptly rose sharply, creating ominous clouds of thunder above them. Her hand was suddenly engulfed in flames again, but this time it was much larger and produced a lot more heat than her previous jutsu stage. She uttered its name, Kaden Odama Kaizuki, just as Naruto had just moments earlier. The command was, "Don't let them touch you," Itachi said. "What plans do you 2 have?" When the Uchiha realized what they were going to do, his eyes widened in surprise. "Those jutsu must require enormous amounts of chakra even for Jinchuriki, so why would you use them so recklessly, unless," he said. The blade of fire sprang out like a lance in a compressed beam of superheated magma towards Hidan as Yugito threw her flame covered hand out like she would a punch. When the undying member of Akatsuki saw it approaching him, His eyes widened in surprise and laughter. The blade sliced past him and appeared to follow him until he leapt high off the ground, but he sidestepped. Then, like he would have a normal shuriken, Naruto twisted his body and hurled his jutsu in the direction of the now airborne Hidan. However, he anticipated it and tossed aside his chain. Connected side. He pulled himself out of the way of the jutsu after it struck a nearby post. When Hidan saw the Rasen shuriken fly directly over his head, he was amused. However, his expression quickly turned scared when the jutsu grew into a huge spinning ball of wind, catching him at its edge. His body was being torn apart by the jutsu's constant friction, and everything in the surrounding area was being drawn into it, making it impossible for him to speak. The remaining two Akatsuki members were blown off their feet by the sudden outward explosion of the wind hurricane, which also forced the Konoha teams to seek cover. Yugito smiled as he asked, "How was that?" Kiba could only respond, "That was pretty cool," to that. They coordinated their strike. Yugito.san forced the Akatsuki member into a corner and Naruto finished him off in one coordinated attack, Yamato said in a statement. Tenten questioned, "That's stage 5? After observing the harm caused by Naruto's jutsu." Yamato replied with a nod, "That's the refined version of stage 5 using the wind element. How they both could throw something with so much compressed power like that, however, I have no idea." Kiba said, shaking his head, "Remind me never to spar with those two, ever, knowing how any future spars would turn out." Itachi said, Kisame, to get his partner's attention. The Uchiha warned him, "Do not underestimate these two. They are not normal Jinchuriki." Kisame was just saying, "Should I cut off their legs? They won't need them and it will make them easier to carry?" Instead of responding, Itachi turned to face the two Jonin while spinning his Sharingan and said, "I'll ask again, will you come quietly?" "No," Naruto said plainly, avoiding eye contact. "Don't look at his eyes. He might catch you in a genjutsu if you do," he said, glancing at the blonde next to him. Itachi muttered, "I'm afraid it's too late for that Naruto-kun," as if he were suddenly surrounded by crows. When the blonde heard, Utakata, he turned to look around and saw nothing but crows. "I know I never looked at your eyes, so how did you? This jutsu allows you to cast genjutsu without eye contact, doesn't it?" Naruto was looking around. When he didn't get a response, he shook his head and said, "This won't help you though." 3 triangles formed on his hand, shattering the genjutsu and exposing the world around him once more. His hand glowed with a golden glow. Itachi narrowed his eyes and Yugito gave him a worried look. Naruto gave her a comforting smile and scowled at the 2 surviving Akatsuki members. The fox Flash practically sneered at the two, saying, "I'll tell you the same thing I told Kakashi. I have 2 Sharingan users as enemies. Do you really think I haven't found a countermeasure to genjutsu by now?" Itachi commanded, "Kisame, get that boy now," and the swordsman bounded forward without further prodding. Yugito whispered, "Naruto," but he still paid attention. She saw the mist swordsman move and said, "Can you keep him off of me while I try and heat up the place?" Knowing what she meant by heat up the place, Naruto nodded and said, "Okay, but be careful." Shunpo no jutsu. He vanished in a flash of yellow. In a flash of yellow, Naruto appeared behind Kisame almost instantly. "What the hell? Why is this guy so fast?" Kisame asked, flipping over the blonde's blow and skidding off. "That isn't typical." Before he could blink, Naruto was in front of him, flashing yellow and saying, "Shunpo no jutsu." As he dodged the blonde's numerous blows, the mist swordsman thought, "Damn it. I see you've gotten better, brat," Kisame said, gritting his teeth as he moved his weight, pushed forward, and clashed with the Konoha Jonin. The blonde shot back, "And I see you still like sushi," as they parted ways. Instead of waiting for a response, Naruto attacked in the hopes of surprising the mist swordsman. Using Shunpo no jutsu, he skidded to a halt and held out his sword, channeling some chakra to create a thin line of wind on the edges of the blade. "Ready for round 2? He asked. At the same time, Yugito was directing a lot of chakra into the air, which made the battlefield hotter by the second. Seeing this through his Sharingan, Itachi ran at breakneck speed in her direction. At the last moment, Yugito caught sight of him and barely avoided the blows from his Anbu styled blade. Itachi took a deep breath and slid away from her as he went through hand seals. The Uchiha swore at her, "Kaden, Gukakyu no Jutsu," and blew out a huge ball of unadulterated fire. When Yugito realized there was no way to avoid it, she raised her arms in a cross in front of her and yelled, "Furor K's." She vanished in a green light and then reappeared on top of the debris of a nearby building. "Damn it." I'm just glad I didn't appear inside solid rock because my jutsu doesn't perform as well without a predetermined location to jump to. Itachi looked down at her and said, let's continue, shall we? The mist swordsman brought his foot down on the blonde after Kisame slashed at him with a broad horizontal slash, causing Naruto to fall to the ground. Rolling to the side, Naruto got to his feet in time to use his shield to block another blow. When Naruto rolled sideways, Kisame raised his arm for a downward slash, but Naruto sliced him across the shoulder, causing the Nukenin to yell and retreat. As Naruto dodged, he swung forward and slashed downward, catching his arm. Not bad, kid. You're good with that sword of yours. I'll admit that, but, he said abruptly. You're still just a kid, he concluded, watching the blonde come to a halt while holding his wound, which was already getting better. As Naruto watched the wound mend itself, he thought, he didn't cut me, it shaved. With a smile, Kisame said, if you liked that, then how about this, before hurling his weapon high into the air and rushing through some hand seals. He yelled, Suiten. Suikoden no Jutsu. And then a water-based shark emerged from the nearby drain, flying straight at the blonde. As Naruto hastily created some hand seals and began channeling chakra into the air, he thought, so that's his game, well, I'll play. I've been wanting to test out my new jutsu anyway. He yelled, Futon. Kazuryuden no Jutsu. As he blocked the water dragon with a huge wind dragon. As a cloud of mist spread across the street, obstructing all views of the area, the two attacks appeared to cancel each other out. With a ball of chakra in hand, Naruto used this cover to approach and say, Rasengan. Kisame hardly noticed the threat before raising his sword to block the blow. As the sword absorbed the chakra, Naruto's eyes widened and he had to retreat. The haze quickly dissipated, and Kisame gave the blonde hero a wry smile. Still sporting that shark-like grin, the swordsman remarked, Samahada here absorbs chakra, kid. That chakra ball of yours won't help you here. Well, that's bad, Naruto said, squinting his eyes. He smiled and said, do you see how useless it is now, kid? He put Samahada to his back and started making hand seals, saying, you're not in my league, but you're an interesting kid. Oh shish. Why is there so much chakra? When Naruto watched the Mist Nukenin finish, he thought uneasily. Suiten. Bakusu Shoha. Kisame exclaimed, launching a huge stream of water from his mouth that spread throughout the surrounding area. Mokuton. Shichuka no Jutsu. Yelled Yamato, punching the ground with his hand. That should be enough. Was the first thought that came to mind when a massive wooden house-shaped structure burst from the earth, lifting the Konoha teams above the approaching wave. The entire neighborhood was covered in splashing water, which pounded the wooden house, but that was close, was the phrase used to describe the building's survival. As she observed the fight, Hanabi questioned, they're not holding anything back, are they? Tenten's response was, no, and I don't think they care for collateral damage either. Damn it, Naruto breathed heavily as he landed on top of one of the posts. I can't let this go on much longer because my sage chakra is almost empty. On top of a huge wave of water that was rushing at him, the shark-man yelled, come here, boy, as he leapt out of the water. With the last of his remaining sage chakra, Naruto thought, I have to stop him before he catches me with that jutsu of his, and he leapt high into the air. The blonde cried out, Cho Udema Rasengan, as he descended again and slammed a gigantic ball of chakra that was bigger than his body into the approaching wave. Entire buildings were blown away, and a huge explosion of water covered the area, soaking everything, and everyone, in sight. The entire city appeared to tremble under the force of the jutsu. However, Yugito and Itachi ignored it because they were still sparring nearby. Deactivation of Sage Mode. As Naruto landed on one of the rooftops that were still standing, he thought grimly, damn it, that last jutsu used up the last of my Sage Chakra. Done? Tell me you're done already, kid? He asked, watching as Kisame came out of the water and stepped onto the rooftop, still smiling. The blonde said nothing as he unfastened the big scroll on his back and let it fall to the ground next to him. As he made a shadow clone, Kisame narrowed his eyes, wondering what the child was doing. The clone then picked up the scroll and spread it out on the ground. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu, Kisame muttered as he used a hand seal to create multiple clones out of the area's abundant water supply. The Mist Swordsman questioned, what are you up to, kid? As Naruto used a series of well-placed blows to destroy the charging clones. Instead of responding, Naruto cut another water clone, turning it into regular water. Now resolved to stop whatever the blonde had planned, Kisame charged forward, but the original Naruto got in the way. Kisame outmaneuvered the blonde, who parried the initial blow, and landed a hit that caught him in the chest. Then the most bizarre thing occurred. A chakra flared over the spot where he had struck. "I know I hit you, so what gives?" Kisame narrowed his eyes as Naruto slid away, gasping for air. With a pause between sentences, Naruto replied, "It's something I call the Rasengan." He straightened up and said, "It deflects most attacks, but it's not finished yet." The Naruto clone behind the original thudded, "Gyaku Kachiyose no Jutsu," as he struck the kanji on the scroll with his hand. As another Naruto clone emerged sitting in the lotus position, there was a puff of smoke and the words, "All right, it's done." Reactivation of Sage Mode. The two clones were defeated, and before Kisame knew it, Naruto was standing in front of him once more, this time in Sage Mode. Naruto sent a flurry of attacks at the Mist Swordsman, who just managed to parry the first one before being pushed back. They clashed swords once more, but this time Naruto pushed both blades toward the ground by shifting his weight to the side. He then kicked the Nukanen's head side with a Sage enhanced kick, sending him plummeting into the water. A few seconds later, Kisame came out, hefting Samahada onto his shoulder while glaring at the blonde. "What's wrong with this brat's chakra? He's getting to be a real pain. I am aware that just now he was finished, but he used that scroll in some way, and now he is fully recovered. What's happening?" Kisame glared at the Konohajanen and thought. "Fire country. Ruins, border." Exhaling a huge ball of fire, Itachi yelled, "Kaden. Gukakyu no Jutsu," at the Kumo Jonin. Yugito gritted her teeth and thought, "Damn it, he's faster than me. He's stronger than that snake freak Orochimaru," she said, plunging into the water to avoid being struck by the attack. He rushed ahead before she could respond, saying, "She's using the water Kisame produced to keep deflecting my Kaden jutsus. Well, then let's see how she does this." Itachi stabbed Yugito in the shoulder with an Anbu style sword when she briefly reappeared, catching her off guard. She attempted to escape, but he continued to push her back while holding the blade in her until she felt herself strike the wall or edge of one of the buildings that were still standing. Itachi caught her by the neck and held her down, preventing her feet from touching the rooftop or the enormous volume of water surrounding them. "Nibi Jinchuriki, it's over. Come quietly and you won't get hurt," the Uchiha said, spinning his Sharingan. Note: I don't know why, but whenever I read or write about Itachi, I can't help but think of Darth Vader. Does anyone else have this problem? Lightning burst from her body, blowing him back and sending him crashing into the water with a loud splash. "Get off of me! Chidori Nagashi!" she cried. "Oh my god, he nearly had me there," Yugito said as he stood up, breathing heavily. "I must admit I was not expecting that from you. You are stronger than anticipated, but you will fall in the end just like the rest of the Jinchuriki we have encountered. You were born a sacrifice and you will die a sacrifice," Itachi said as he emerged from the water a moment later, appearing to be unharmed. "No way!" Yugito yelled as she formed a ball out of her lightning chakra and channeled it into her hand. She shouted, "Odama Raikyu," as she threw a lightning ball the size of her chest at him. When Yugito aimed her bow, Itachi narrowed his eyes and dodged easily. She lowered her aim at the water right in front of him, and he was ready to dodge another arrow. Itachi had to leap back when she released a flowing white-blue arrow that touched the water where he had been standing. The area and everything surrounding it erupted and formed into a wall of ice before he could take any action. "Kori no ya," Yugito uttered, his breath coming in short gasps. "A Hayaten Jutsu?" As Itachi began to form hand seals, he thought, this girl is full of surprises, but she must be reaching her limit by now. "Kaden. Ryuka no Jutsu," he exclaimed as he threw a set of wires around the enormous wall of ice and exhaled a thick stream of fire along the wire. The massive dragon-shaped mass of fire was carried along the wire before it crashed into the ice wall and instantly melted it. Itachi yelled, "It's over. Surrender now. Did you ever think that maybe I wanted you to do that?" Yugito asked, grinning, as he stood on the building's roof. The Uchiha asked inquisitively, "Why would you want me to melt it?" His interest was short-lived. "Oh dear," he thought as he looked up and saw that many thunderclouds had gathered in the air above them. Raiden. Kirin. Susanoo, a huge, dog-like creature formed of lightning suddenly descended from the sky and struck the water with a thunderous blast, sending shockwaves and enormous amounts of heat for 100 feet. All four of the fighters were visible standing on the water once the dust had settled. Kisame said, "Hey, are you alright?" to his partner. "I'm fine," said Itachi, who was on one knee and holding his side. "Kisame," he said, glaring up at the Kumo Jonin. The mist swordsman nodded and made multiple hand seals. "Right," he said. He yelled, "Sweden. Daibakufu no Jutsu," as a huge water wave rose. Yugito mumbled, "Damn it," and seized Naruto. "Nairu-I," she exclaimed, encircling the two Jonin with a huge blue crystal. The massive wave struck the crystal with force, but it held, and when it subsided, it revealed that neither of the Jonin had been hurt. "Tough little brats," mumbled Kisame, annoyed. The Konoha Jonin said, "Yugito," giving her a sidelong glance. She aimed her bow at the Uchiha and said, "I know, Hai no ya," she said, shooting multiple fire arrows at him in the hopes that at least one would land. Kaden. Hosenka no Jutsu. Itachi spit out several head-sized fireballs after making multiple hand seals when he saw them approaching. Water shot into the air as the arrows struck the fireballs and exploded in the middle of the two. Almost instantly, Naruto leapt forward, crashing through the massive water splash that accompanied the explosion, and struck Kisame with his sword. When the mist swordsman raised his Samahata to defend, the blow pushed him hard down into the water. Yugito sensed something behind her, but she couldn't turn in time before someone grabbed her by the neck and lifted her off her feet. When she realized Itachi had seized her, she attempted to break free, but his hold on her neck tightened, causing her to choke a little. The Uchiha slammed his eyes open and revealed his Mangekyo Sharingan, saying, "You cannot escape now." No, she was compelled to meet his gaze, and her eyes grew wide. Tsukuyomi. Being aware. Tsukuyomi. When Yugito's eyes opened, she saw that she was strapped to a cross in a yard of some sort, its colors inverted. As she tried to hide her fear, she asked, "What's going on?" Itachi's voice said, "You will be stabbed, poisoned, and otherwise tortured into submission for the next 70.2 hours, as 20 figures materialized around her." Despite her best efforts, she was unable to escape her bonds, and as they approached, she began to feel a little anxious. Stay back," she said in a terrified tone. Before he stabbed her in the stomach, Itachi questioned, "Shall we begin?" But since it stopped before it made contact, that wasn't supposed to happen. A blonde woman with a long, light pink dress and a small, nearly cereal blade in front of her, holding his own sword down at the floor, stopped it. She appeared to be around 25 years old. Intrigued, the Uchiha asked, "Who are you?" The woman simply replied, "It is of no concern to you," with a smile. "Begone, manipulator. You have no place here," she said, shifting her weight and putting her hand on his shoulder. For a moment, Itachi's eyes widened, and then his whole body, along with everyone else's, turned into a black liquid. Yugito fell to the floor, after the bonds holding her to the cross broke a moment later. After a moment she stood and stared at the woman before her. Softly, the woman asked, "Are you all right?" Yugito replied with a wink, "I recognize you. You're Princess Zelda of Hyrule who lived before the age of Shinobi, aren't you?" "No, you are," the woman replied with a nearly sly smile. "You will understand in time," the woman said with a smile as Yugito appeared momentarily perplexed. "For the moment, take some of my power. It is yours after all," she said, placing her hand on the teen's shoulder. The world appeared to break like glass before Yugito could react. Fire Country. Ruins, border. Everyone there watched as the battlefield burst into light, sending shockwaves across the water. As the light faded, Yugito was seen floating above the water in a pink dress, holding a bow in her left hand and a small sword at her side in her right. Her right eye was hidden by her downed hair, which appeared to be blowing in the wind. Note: imagine the scene in LOZ TP where you battle Zelda near the end, but without the seals Ganondorf applied to her entire body. A moment later, she landed on the water, swung her sword at her side, and looked straight into Itachi's eyes. After a moment of rubbing his eyes, he glared at her while holding his Anbu sword close to him. The lower left triangle of the triad mark on the back of her hand glowed a bright blue, and Yugito held out her short sword away from her. A medium-sized ball of lightning formed at the tip of her sword, and she yelled, "Let's finish this! Odama Raikyu!" She threw the ball at him with the sword. Who was that woman and how did she escape Tsukuyomi? As he avoided the lightning bolt and saw that his opponent had vanished, Itachi pondered the question. Where did she go? He searched but couldn't find anything. At that moment, he heard it. She appeared to be floating above the ground, aiming her bow down at him as he looked straight up. He felt the tremendous amount of chakra she was releasing into the arrow she had loaded, and his eyes widened. She whispered, "Hikari no Ya," and hurled the bright yellow arrow at him from above. He used his tremendous speed to dodge the arrow, but it didn't do much good because he knew he would die if she hit him directly. A brilliant light glowed from the spot where the arrow struck the water. Through his widening Sharingan eyes, He saw the city soaked but without water as the chakra Kisame used to create the massive mass of water abruptly vanished and evaporated in a matter of seconds. Knowing how dangerous she was now, Itachi thought in shock, her jutsu just now, it didn't just get rid of the chakra in the water, but it completely destroyed the chakra in the water. Imagine how easily she could defeat a Biju if she applied that jutsu to a mass of chakra. She was at ground level in front of him before he could blink, and she slashed his cheek with her short sword, causing blood to flow from it. He dodged the next blow, but he was unprepared for her to turn on her heel and kick him in the chest, sending him through the wall of the only remaining building in the area. As he got back up in time to block another blow from the Kumo Jonin, the Uchiha thought, her speed has increased drastically even though she's wearing those clothes and her jutsu are nothing to snort at either. She's dressed like that woman I encountered in Tsukuyomi. Perhaps it is related to the Nibi in some way, she said, attempting to push the other back with their swords as they clashed. In the meantime, Naruto and Kisame were engaged in a fierce kenjutsu battle nearby. When Naruto made a horizontal, Kisame retreated and raised his enormous sword. It wasn't shocking when Naruto easily avoided the downward slash because they both knew that Kisame would have a longer reach than Naruto because Samahata was longer than him. However, this also meant that Kisame was slower than Naruto. Whatever became of Yugito? After witnessing his girlfriend's metamorphosis, Naruto asked thoughtfully. Was that what Nibi did, or what else? The triangle of the triad on his right hand briefly glowed dimly green, but he was unaware of it. After successfully knocking the master sword aside and kicking him, Kisame yelled, "You shouldn't let your guard down, brat." In order to defend himself, Naruto raised the mirror shield, but the force of the kick knocked it off his wrist, sending him sliding backward. After a moment, Naruto stood up and looked down to see that his shield was gone, but he was still holding the master sword. The Konoha Jonin thought, I have to end this now, and sealed his hand. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, he said as two clones materialized next to him and began directing chakra toward his free hand. Oh crap, that's the... Kisami's eyes widened as he saw what the blonde was doing. With the spinning chakra shuriken in hand, Naruto yelled, Futon. Rasen shuriken, against him. Let's see you break through that, the mist swordsman said, running through multiple hand seals and slamming his hands to the ground. Suijin. Suijinheki. A huge wall of water formed from the water that was left over from his prior jutsu. Unfortunately for him, that is precisely what occurred. The Rasen shuriken proceeded toward him at a terrifying speed, slicing through the water wall as if it were made of paper. Just as the chakra shuriken exploded in a ball of wind below him, he leapt high in the hopes of avoiding the jutsu. Futon. Kazuryuden no Jutsu. When Kisame looked up, he saw a huge wind-shaped dragon approaching him. When the dragon was close enough, he tried to cut it in half with his sword at his side. He saw two of Naruto's shadow clones descending from above after the move successfully stopped the wind dragon. He raised his sword and waited for them to approach before striking, but things didn't work out the way he had hoped. Bunshin Deibakuha. The clones exclaimed, exploding in two balls of glorious fire. As he was hurled downward and smashed into the middle of the road, Kisame swore. After a moment, he stood shakily and turned to face his opponent, who was nowhere to be seen. Knowing that losing sight of Naruto is the one thing you must never do when fighting him, he cursed once more. At that moment, he heard the boy's distinctive jutsu whistle faintly, and the wind seemed to pick up a bit. Kisame quickly turned, but it was already too late. Naruto yelled, Rasenrengen, as he launched his attack. The two spinning chakra balls struck, but Kisame was able to block them with his sword just in time. However, Samahata was unable to absorb the chakra this time, and as a result, the mist swordsman was blasted back with tremendous force before colliding with the last remaining building's support beam. It appeared to bury Kisame alive when it fell in on itself. Itachi yelled, Kisame, as he watched his partner succumb to the Konoha Jonin's constant assaults. Naruto yelled, Raseniki, and threw a ball of chakra at the shattered structure. The jutsu caused so much damage to the building that what was left of it was destroyed. Once the dust had settled, Itachi leapt into the debris and used his Mangekyo Sharingan. He whispered, Amaterasu, while turning to face Naruto. His eyes erupted in black flames that shot toward Naruto at breakneck speed. However, Yugito appeared in front of him with the mirror shield just as they were ready to strike, using it to divert the flames to the side. In between breaths, Naruto said, Thanks for the save, as she returned his shield to him. Itachi managed to pull Kisame out after his hand exploded from the debris. They exchanged a brief look before nodding in agreement. The statement, we'll settle this some other time Naruto-kun, was made by Itachi while he sealed his hands several times. He vanished in a Konoha Shunshin no Jutsu, circle of leaves. Kisame said, until next time brats, while making multiple hand seals. Mizu Shunshin no Jutsu, he said, vanishing in a water whirlpool. It became evident after a short while that the two would not be returning. With a sigh of relief, Yugito said, it's finally over. Deactivation of Sage Mode. For now, Naruto nodded, hooking his shield onto his back and sheathing his sword. I'll be back in a minute. I just need to get something, he said over his shoulder as he began to move in the direction of the location of his reverse summoning scroll. Yugito nodded, all right, as she felt her clothing abruptly change and become more like her usual outfit. That's strange, she thought as she noticed the dim glow of the triad symbol on her hand. Thank you, princess, she said with a smile and a headshake before making her way to the other. When she arrived, the Konoha teams were strewn across the front of a wooden house that was barely standing. Yugito-san. Yamato nodded in greeting. Thank you for saving our lives. The others nodded as well. I just wish we had gotten here soon, she said to him, glancing at the still images of Konohamaru and Kakashi. How are they doing? Konohamaru-kun will be fine but… Kakashi. Senpai is, Yamato said, shaking his head. Yugito made a, I see, nod in comprehension. To shift the topic, Yamato inquired, where's Naruto? He's grabbing the scroll from where he left it during the fight. He should be back in a minute or two, the Kumo Jonin said, gesturing to the spot where Naruto had fled to. And Akatsuki? Inquired Lee. They're gone, was Naruto's statement as he leapt into the street where the teams were occupying. So what do we do now? Kiba asked, scanning the group with a sigh of relief. After a brief period of silence, Naruto interrupted, drawing everyone's attention with the words, we're leaving. Everyone pack up the injured, we're heading back home, to Konoha. Fire Nation. Hokage's office, Konoha, and then we returned home, Sakura concluded his research. I see, Tsunade said, leaning back in her chair and surveying the teams. It was reckless of you to run out and fight Akatsuki alone, Sakura, she added with a sigh. Sakura looked up at that, and the pink-haired Chunin looked down. However, she said, given the circumstances it was a wise decision. It wasn't enough though, Sakura uttered, barely raising her voice above a whisper, recalling her first sensei's demise. After closing her eyes for a moment, Tsunade said, I'll take care of the arrangements. Kakashi's funeral is scheduled for tomorrow at sunset. She sighed once more after a few moments of silence and said, okay, let's move on to more important matters. Everyone was staring at that, because the current crisis has passed. I am dissolving the teams again. I am reforming Team Naruto and will place you back on the active list tomorrow evening after the funeral. Neji, I believe your team is almost ready for a C-rank mission? Yes, they are. I left them with Ebisu since his team was out of commission, the Hyuga man said with a nod of confirmation. I should have a mission available for them in 3 days, the Hokage said, nodding in comprehension. Your team has fully recovered. They should be ready for active shinobi missions by tomorrow morning. You should pay them a visit, she said, turning to the youngest Hyuga in the group after noticing him nod. Thank you, Hokage. Sama, said Hanabi, bowing her head. All right, everyone except Team Naruto is fired, the Hokage sighed. Only Naruto, Yugito, Sakura, Lee, Tenten, Sai, Yamato, and Tsunade remained in the room after the teams departed one by one. All right. Team Naruto, you will be doing missions again, but this time you will be assigned missions outside of the Orochimaru and Akatsuki matters, Tsunade said. There's nothing major, but there are a few missions only this team is suited for, the Hokage stated. Such as? Asked Naruto. There's nothing yet, but there will be soon. All of the smaller villages have started picking sides, so the political arena is deteriorating, replied Tsunade. With concern, Yamato inquired, what about the major villages? Suna and Kumo have already joined us, but, the Hokage sighed. It's not enough, concluded Naruto. The answer was, no, it isn't, as Tsunade shook her head. I want you all to continue any training you can while you still have the time. You may not get the chance later, she said, surveying the team. Is there anything else? They all nodded simultaneously. Someone said, just one thing, from the window. Naruto said, Arrow. Sennin, as he always does. Stop calling me that. The notorious Sannin Jiraiya snarled angrily. What are you doing here? Asked Naruto with a simple smile. He breathed deeply, I'm going to finish your training once and for all. The statement, I thought I learned everything you were going to teach me, shocked Naruto and everyone else. As he leaned on the window sill, Jiraiya said, you have. except one thing which I will be teaching you now. The Gamma. Sennin said, meet me at training ground 44 aka the Forest of Death, and then vanished in a cloud of smoke. When Naruto said, I wonder why he wanted to meet at the Forest of Death. Yugito pondered the potential theories and concluded, it's probably a very deadly jutsu that shouldn't be used around allies. Naruto questioned her, are you coming too? Yeah, I want to learn some Kaiden jutsu anyways, so he might be able to teach me some of them, she replied with a wink. Tsunade said, all right, then you're dismissed, and they all bowed before heading out. Her words, oh wait, I almost forgot, came to mind just then. As Tsunade threw a Jonin flak jacket to Sakura, saying, because the mission was a success I can now officially promote you to Jonin rank Sakura, the team halted and turned. The pink-haired Jonin said, I'm a Jonin? Tsunade grinned and nodded, saying, yes, I'm happy I remembered that. Despite being a Jonin himself, Naruto didn't wear a Jonin flak jacket, and Sakura nodded but didn't put it on because green wasn't her color. Now that she considered it, Neji didn't either. Actually, Shikamaru and Lee were the only two members of the Konoha 11 to wear ones. Yugito, in fact, did not don the Kumo Jonin flak jacket. Thank you Shisho, Sakura said with a small bow. The words, everyone, dismissed, were nodded by Tsunade. Fire Country. Graveyard, Konoha Hitaki Kakashi's funeral was held the following day. The Konoha 11, Yugito, Yamato, Sai, Tsunade, and the whole Enbu contingent that wasn't on missions attended the ceremony, which was surprisingly large. Sakura, who had looked up to the man as a father since her parents had passed away 3 years prior, was unable to contain her tears during the entire event. The sky had stopped crying over the passing of a devoted friend and teacher as the ceremony came to an end and Kakashi's name was inscribed on the memorial stone. As his body was turned to ash and set on fire using a Kaiden jutsu, everyone started to depart one by one. As everyone else left, Yugito removed the still crying Sakura with a nod from Naruto. In the end, the only people left in the clearing were Naruto and Tsunade, the former of whom was merely gazing at the memorial stone. Tsunade broke the silence by saying, there was nothing you could have done. We could have been faster, if we had been there sooner then maybe, Naruto said, his fist clenched slightly as he stared. The Hokage reiterated, there was nothing you could have done, he sacrificed himself for you all, don't dishonor that sacrifice by beating yourself up over what happened, Naruto said, remaining silent while continuing to gaze at the stone. Naruto closed his eyes and spoke. He gave a slight sigh, I hated him a little for leaving me to fend for myself back during the Chunin exams but, I just don't know what to think anymore. I mean he was a good guy even if he made some mistakes. I can't fault him for that but, he didn't deserve to die, Tsunade said without comment. Tsunade cracked a sad face, some people who die shouldn't have and others should. That's the way things are, it can't be changed. I need some time to think, Naruto said, nodding in comprehension before turning to face the private cemetery farther down the path. As he walked away, Tsunade nodded and said, Naruto, don't take too long. Before long, the Konoha Jonin was standing in front of a very small group of graves, the Hokage's graves. Sarutobi Hiruzen, Senju Hashirama, Senju Tobirama, and Namikaze Minato. Like the wives of the other Hokages, his wife's grave was covered in flowers and lay next to him. Naruto started by examining his parents' 2 graves. Hey mom, hey dad, I have to be honest, I didn't want to visit here at all. I hate graveyards, I guess I always have, he said. I'm sure you both are already aware that Kakashi that he's no longer with us. A part of me hates him still but another part feels guilty about not being able to save him, I'm not sure what to do. Hey, I never got to see under his mask either, he said after a brief period of silence. He laughed sorrowfully. I hope he's doing alright. Even if he did make some mistakes, it's what makes us human. I hope you both take care of him wherever you are. The words, goodbye mom, dad, sensei, appeared on his lips as he turned to go. A moment later, he vanished as a light wind blew across the cemetery, completely unaware that the mark on his hand had been faintly glowing the whole time. As the restored team Naruto was dispatched on numerous missions throughout the elemental countries, 3 months went by without any incidents. The majority of them were to find missing nin who were either directly or indirectly responsible for Akatsuki's funding. A team was dispatched to try and find any information regarding Orochimaru's location in a few cases that also involved Otokagure no Sato. Unfortunately, they found nothing. The political climate outside the missions had gotten worse. Different nations had completed forming alliances with the bigger villages they had decided to join. Everyone in Konoha responded to this by increasing their training for the impending war, which they were all aware of by this point. Due to an important event that occurred a month ago, both the village's genin and the civilians learned about it. Or the absence of it, Kirigakure no Sato cancelled the Chunin exams because the Mizukage forbade them from taking place in his village. This caused a ripple effect among the major villages, and all of them, including Konoha, forbade the Chunin exams from taking place in their own villages. As a result, inquiries were made, and all shinobi higher than Chunin were compelled to inform the civilians of the circumstances. Every nation had started to fortify their borders and get ready for war at any time. The Fire Daimyo had deferred to Tsunade's decision because tensions between the countries were high. Even though the conflict would eventually be ignited by something or someone. Regarding the team's fate outside of missions, well, Yamato had started teaching Konohamaru how to control his second elemental affinity, which turned out to be Earth, and Sai had continued to be loyal to a man named Danzo. Tenten had been training with Neji most of the time, and Sakura and Lee had joined forces as sparring partners to further develop their taijutsu. However, when they weren't on any missions, Naruto and Yugito spent the majority of their time in the Forest of Death. Utilizing their enormous chakra reserves, they had been working virtually non-stop while utilizing the Taiyu Bunshin no Jutsu to quicken their learning pace. Their only chance of surviving the upcoming months, or even years, was that Jiraiya had taught Naruto a form of Oni Jutsu during this period because he was essentially the only person who could use it without dying. The inhuman chakra requirements required for a single use of the technique made the futon Renkuden an A-rank jutsu, which by human standards was a kinjutsu. Jiraiya could only use it once during a battle before being depleted, leaving him defenseless. Naruto, on the other hand, always had chakra to spare and could use it up to 3 times. Regarding Yugito, she spent a whole month, 7 with clones, creating the Kaden Rasengan after learning it from Naruto. Despite her extensive use of chakra and elemental manipulation, she was unable to replicate Konohamaru's Kaden Odama Rasengan. Since it was nearly impossible to even make it to stage 4, Jiraiya had advised her not to bother. Jiraiya had also permitted her to learn the Kaden Gukakyu no Jutsu because he believed she could benefit from it. Things became complicated once more at that point. Fire Nation. Hokage's office, Konoha knock. Tsunade called out from her chair, "Come in." "Ah, good. You're here. Come in," was said as the door opened and Team Naruto members entered the room. Sakura said, "You wanted to see us, Shisho?" as the group came to a halt in front of the Hokage's desk. "Yes, I have a mission for you," Tsunade said, nodding and holding out a piece of paper. After reading the paper once, Naruto said, "It's an A-rank mission, but it could be higher." Naruto looked at the paper and said, "Kazuhana Koyuki, where have I heard that name before?" Sakura remembered the name and said, "Koyuki. She's the daimyo of Snow Country, remember? We helped her take back her country from her stupid uncle back when we were genin?" Like everyone else, Yugito gave the two a strange look. "You two helped take over a country? Does this happen to you both often?" she inquired. More times than not, Naruto muttered bitterly as he recalled the numerous occasions he had assisted in the transformation of several princesses into daimyos. There are actually about 3 if you watch the anime. Yamato nodded grudgingly. "Right, before joining this team, I should have probably reviewed Kakashi Senpai's mission history. In any case, how many high-class missions did they take while they were genin?" he added thoughtfully. "Well, anyway, back to the mission. Koyuki has requested Team Kakashi to aid her since she knows them, but since Sasuke's defection and Kakashi's passing, I'm sending Team Naruto instead," Tsunade continued. Raising an eyebrow, Naruto questioned, "What's the situation?" He added, "She wouldn't call unless it was important," being aware of the Snow Daimyo's personality. "The message didn't say," was Tsunade's honest response. Tenten muttered, "Great," with a hint of bitterness. Naruto said, "All right, we'll see Koyuki first and find out what's going on," and Tsunade nodded. "Is there anything else, Obaken?" "No, that's everything," said the Hokage, shaking her head. Naruto told his group, "Then let's go," as they turned to depart. Country of Spring. Doc Tenten said, "I've never been to Snow Country before," as the group got off the ship they had been traveling in. She pointed to the numerous plants surrounding them and said, "I don't understand why they call it Snow Country. I mean, look around, I don't see any snow anywhere." Sai, who always had a smile on his face, said, "From what I learned from my resources, they changed the name after they heated the country up, as they put it. They were probably able to fix the heat generator that Koyuki Hime's father created." Sakura sighed at that. Sai thought, I wonder if it's in the shape of a dick, but everyone ignored him because they had grown accustomed to his fixation on those appendages. He actually called people some pretty ludicrous names. For example, he publicly referred to Hyuga Neji as a birdman. When he wasn't on duty, he called Naruto dickless, Sakura pink-haired bitch, Tenten dominatrix girl, and even Lee Mr. Eyebrows, and Guy Grandpa Eyebrows. The term Woody had even been applied to Yamato. Actually, Yugito was the only one he didn't name because she threatened to use a Kaizuki to cut off his balls if he ever heard him give her one. Regardless of your identity, if you're a man, you'll stop at nothing to avoid that penalty. Knowing nothing about this part of the world, Yamato asked, "So where do we go from here?" Naruto said, "The train should be this way," and he began to move in the direction of the neighboring town. "What's a train?" Yugito inquired, lost. Naruto uttered the words, "A very fast transportation machine. I came across one the last time I was here," very awkwardly. The statement, "more like you were almost killed by one," caused Sakura to roll her eyes. "What?" Yugito's eyes widened a little. "It's nothing. It's just the last time I saw one it was trying to hit me. I will never try to outrun a train ever again," Naruto said, laughing uneasily and dismissively with a wave of his hand. After a few minutes of walking, they arrived at the train station and discovered that one of these trains was already there. However, Sai couldn't help but remark, "It looks like a dick," when they saw it. "Kill me now, please." As the group got out of the train car, Yugito questioned, "Where to now?" Naruto replied, "Koyuki's palace is just north of here, we'll have to go the rest of the way on foot," and he began walking toward one of the nearby mountains. "What's this palace like?" Tenten inquired inquisitively. Sakura began by interrupting Naruto. "Well, the Kazuhana Palace was located in the middle of a rock formation. There's only one way in directly, and that's through the gap in the mountainside. For ninja, however, they can just get over by going over the mountains themselves." "Sounds like it was built as a fortress instead of a palace," Tenten started to say. "Well, technically, it was," Sakura sighed. When Lee said, "Hey, isn't that smoke?" everyone turned to listen. He remarked, "I don't think those from Flames of Youth," indicating the mountain they were traveling to. There was a big cloud of smoke coming up behind the mountain. Yugito remarked, "That's not good," as the group began to sprint at ninja speed in the direction of the mountain. Naruto yelled, "Sai, find out what's going on," to the root member. With a nod, Sai pulled out his ink brush and book. He whispered, "Shouju Giga," as a big ink bird emerged from his illustration. With haste, he mounted the ink bird and shot skyward at great speed. The Kazuhana Palace he had heard so much about was soon visible as he passed the mountain's edge. He could see what was causing the few fires that were coming from the burned trees at the entrance to the rock formation. There was an attack on the palace. At least 24 of them were present, with 3 figures observing the assaulting group from behind with little interest. All of the assailants seemed to be wearing some sort of red cloak with an image of a roaring wolf on the back. There were what appeared to be Haru Nins, formerly known as Yuki Nins, on the other side of the battlefield. He turned his ink bird around and went back to the others who were using chakra to ascend the mountain at that moment. There appears to be over 24 unidentified shinobi fighting Haru Nins inside the defense perimeter of the rock formation, Sai said with a reporter's voice. As the group ran up the mountainside, Naruto questioned, "Any idea who they are?" "No," Sai told him, "but they seem to be wearing red cloaks." Yugito's eyes narrowed and she questioned, "Red cloaks? Did they have the picture of a wolf on their backs?" "Yes, as a matter of fact they did," said Sai, nodding. "Blood howlers," growled the Kumo Jonin. "We don't know that," Naruto reassured her at the time. He was aware that it might be someone else, because she had some problems with that particular group of people. Sakura inquired in confusion, "Who are the blood howlers?" as neither of them had previously mentioned the name. "They're dangerous," Naruto said tentatively, unsure of how to put it. He said, "We have to hurry," as the group accelerated up the slope. Activated Sage Mode. For the most part, Tatsuoki had been enjoying his day. He had risen early and been instructed to accompany a few dozen ninjas to the Kazuhana Palace by the leader of Harugakure no Sato. He had anticipated a pleasant, peaceful day where he and the other 70 Haru Nins could rest, have fun, and spend their money when they arrived at the palace. They had no idea that a gang of red-cloaked demons would massacre them. The individuals who attacked the palace and, indirectly, themselves were obviously abnormal. They hardly used jutsu at all. They mostly used swords that were infused with chakra or lightning jutsu. At the beginning of the fight, the Haru Nins were outnumbered. but each time they defeated one of these creatures, they lost 3 of their own. Tatsuoki was aware that their numbers were decreasing, and his rage increased when he saw the attackers' leaders. Compared to the tiny fry that were currently attacking, these 3 people were completely different. One was a man, and the other 2 were women. These attackers were distinguished by their gold and white outline, but they all wore the same red cloak as the others. As the 3 began to approach, the little fry eventually broke off the attack and retreated behind them. When Tatsuoki yelled, "Don't let them near the palace. Kill them all for what they have done here today," the other Haru nins cheered, bracing themselves for this new danger. Kyusei.kun, the woman in the middle of the 3, said, "I get tired of this. Would you just kill them already? I suppose we should hurry this up," a man in a white ghost mask and shrouded in shadows thought. He stepped out in front of the group and raised his hand. "Kage Nui no Jutsu," the shadows that had encased his wrist said as they flew out and twisted downward toward the Haru nins. As he ducked the large area attack, Tatsuoki yelled, "Everyone get out of the way." "There's not enough time," yelled Shinji, his second in command. A voice murmured, "Nairu I," and then the Haru nins and the palace were surrounded by a huge blue crystal. To the surprise of the gathered bloodhowlers, the shadows bounced off without causing any harm. Kyusei exclaimed, "What?" since no one had ever repelled his blows before. "Maria. Sama. Above us," the woman in the middle exclaimed, looking up abruptly at the yell. "Sho Udama Rasengan," Naruto said as he lowered himself toward them while holding a big ball of spinning chakra. Although Yugito's jutsu prevented it from endangering the palace, the jutsu exploded with such force that it sent a shockwave across the land and turned the mountainside into a crater. With the exception of the 3 leaders, who seemed largely unharmed, the majority of the bloodhowlers were either dead or dying by the end of it all. "Thank you for the warning, Kanako-chan," Maria said to the previously unnamed bloodhowler. "This is unexpected." "I live to serve Milady," Kanako said, bowing slightly to her mistress. Kyusei looked at the gathered team Naruto between them and the Haru ninjas and said, "Hey, isn't that who I think it is?" "Yes, it is," Maria said loudly as she laughed ominously and addressed the alliance team. As purple flames started to flicker across her body, Yugito's eyes took on a glare. "It's been a while since I last saw you, princess. You've grown," she said. "Easy, Yugito," Naruto said, extending his arm before her. He concluded, "We shouldn't charge in blindly." Sakura couldn't resist saying, "Coming from you, that doesn't sound right." "It does when you know that these guys were the ones that put Kiba and Shino in the hospital a few months back," Naruto replied. "Hinata told me about a group wearing red cloaks where a single one of their members took out the entire team," he said. Tenten pulled out her family katana and questioned, "Just one of them did that?" As she bounded forward, Yugito declared, "It doesn't matter. I'm going to kill every last one of them, Furore K's," she said before vanishing in a wind spiral. Naruto yelled to his team, "Stubborn girl. Come on, Sakura. Everyone else protect the palace," as he and Sakura both leapt forward. With the words, "Shunpo no Jutsu," he vanished in a burst of yellow light. As Maria dodged 7 exploding fire arrows from above, she thought, "These must be." Yugito yelled, "Hai no ya," as she touched down a short distance from Maria, who was now confused. "Kaizuki," she exclaimed as she lunged forward, her arm blazing. Maria quickly spun around and pulled out a medium-sized, double-edged sword that, for want of a better term, had blue veins. Just as she was about to block the blonde girl's attack, she turned and poured a lot of chakra into the blade. The blood howler yelled, "Raijingu Sanda," as the 2 attacks collided. The space between them exploded with a loud roar, driving both fighters away from one another. As she recovered swiftly, Yugito thought grimly, "This isn't going to be easy." As she steadied herself, Maria laughed and said, "Not bad, princess, but not good enough, just like your mother." Yugito roared, "Shut up," as she charged forward once more, determined to tear the bloodhowler leader to pieces. Sakura swung her hammer around with a chakra string, determined to beat Kanako like a drum, thinking, "She's fast." With a backflip, Kanako, Kesho, Rakaku Shuriken, Ranbu, and extended her arms in Sakura's direction. When Sakura noticed that many crystal shuriken were approaching her, her eyes briefly widened. To avoid the attack, she kicked up the ground in front of her and ducked behind it, causing it to pass harmlessly over her head. Would she be able to use Shoten jutsus? "I've never heard of anything like that before," she said, running out of cover to begin making hand seals. She muttered, "Megan Jubaku Satsu," while attempting to deceive her adversary. Kanako merely stated, "Genjutsu won't work on me," as she put her hand on the floor. "Shoten. Suishiheki Hachi no Jin," Kanako said as crystals abruptly emerged from the ground and proceeded in Sakura's direction. Sakura thought, "That's bad," and leapt high to get away from the crystallizing jutsu area. Kanako said, "Got you," as the crystals erupted, seized Sakura's leg, and then encased her whole body. Damn it! Her body vanished in an instant, to be replaced by a big rock with an explosive tag attached. She didn't use Kawarimi Jutsu. The crystal was destroyed when the tag exploded in a loud explosion. A moment later, Sakura swung her hammer at the Howler's midsection after dropping down behind her. Kanako quickly spun around, but he was powerless to halt the terrible force of the weapon, which was rumored to have been able to defeat dragons with a few blows. However, Kanako recovered swiftly and was about to launch another attack when Sakura began hurling kunai at her while carrying bags. What is she doing? As the bags were ripped apart and tiny tags flew everywhere around him, Kanako asked thoughtfully, "What is this?" When he saw the kanji written on the tags, she merely asked that his eyes enlarge. Sakura said, "Sakura Fubuki no Jutsu, enjoy," and hurled a kunai at the Howler with a lit explosive tag. A second later, it exploded, setting off the smaller tags surrounding him. As a result, there was a loud roar that reverberated throughout the canyon and flames that engulfed the entire area surrounding the Blood Howler. But when the fire subsided, she could plainly see Kanako standing there, totally unharmed, and then some. "What is that?" Sakura pondered as she observed the woman's body covered in a thin layer of crystal. "My Kesho no Yoroi will not be so easily defeated by an attack like that," she said, sounding almost haughty with a hint of amusement. "You're going to have to do better than that, my dear." Sakura's thoughts, however, kept returning to Sasori and how much this woman reminded her of him while he was speaking. At least in terms of personality, they were identical, but this woman was more conceited than insane. She would beat her in one way or another, but she would do whatever it took. The two attacked each other without needing to communicate. As Naruto leapt sideways through the air to avoid the Kyusei's dozens of spear. Like shadow weapons, he thought, "Damn this guy. I can't get close enough." He used wind elemental manipulation to blast himself out of the way of another attack and began to form hand seals. It's like fighting against Neji and Gaara at the same time. There just aren't any openings. "Well then I'll just have to make one," he said. Naruto yelled, "Futon! Kazuryuden no Jutsu!" As a wind-shaped dragon emerged from his extended arm. "Too easy," Kyusei said with a smile behind his mask as the wind dragon was slashed down by his shadows before it could strike him. Naruto yelled, "Futon! Renkuden!" as he blasted his opponent with a concentrated blast of pure wind. Shortly before the wind projectile exploded where he stood, Kyusei saw the attack coming and ducked with ease. The explosion itself blew the Blood Howler back and left another crater in the mountainside. That was risky, the shadow user reflected as he steadied himself. When he noticed the recognizable flash of yellow, his eyes darted to the side. That last attack was just a distraction, he thought. Naruto yelled, "Rasengan!" and struck Kyusei's stomach with a ball of pure spinning chakra. Everyone was taken aback by what transpired next, though, as a shadow that resembled a blade suddenly tore Naruto's right arm from his body. Country of Spring. Doc, after fighting back the sting of pain from the wound, Naruto backed away while holding onto his now missing right arm. He then glared up at the man he had been fighting. His right side was inundated with pain, but the adrenaline in his body prevented it from having any impact on him. Naruto grunted, "Damn it," and reached for his sword's handle with his left hand before slashing at the Blood Howler. Seeing it coming, Kyusei raised his arm, Shadow Blade, to block it. At that moment, Tenten descended from above and slashed the shadow user's shielded chest with her katana. Despite being knocked back by the attack, Kyusei recovered swiftly and paused to identify the attacker. Tenten questioned her team leader, "Are you alright?" "It's just a flesh wound," Naruto said, wincing as he nodded. At that, Tenten simply shook her head. "I'll bet. How do we take this guy down?" she asked. Naruto said, "I have an idea, cover me," as he began to channel chakra with his good hand. Tenten gave a nod and rushed in Kyusei's direction. What plans do they have? The girl with the buns in her hair made a hand seal, which made the shadow user think. She muttered, "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu," as 5 clones materialized beside her. She cried out, "Konoha-ryu Mikazuki no Mai," as she performed the intricate sword move. Under his mask, Kyusei smiled, impressive, but then he noticed a tiny ball with spikes emerging from it directly in front of his face. Tenten grinned and said, Boom, as the bomb exploded in front of him with a powerful thunderclap and roar of flames. 6 spears that resembled shadows suddenly emerged from the smoke and attempted to stab her. In an attempt to put some distance between them, she skidded farther away while avoiding with the aid of her clones. It's no surprise that Naruto Taicho had so much trouble with this guy, Tenten thought grimly as she prepared her katana once more. But it wasn't necessary. Naruto yelled, "Sho Udema Rasengan," as he launched an attack using the terrifying ball of spinning chakra. Even I didn't sense him. When the attack struck him, Kyusei thought it was a shock. Let's just say that the surroundings were abruptly redecorated. Sakura gritted her teeth as another crystal shuriken touched her shoulder. "Damn this girl," she said. With what looked like a crystal blade fastened to the woman's wrist, Kanako emerged behind the pink-haired Jonin and said, "She's fast." Shoten. Suisho too. The howler smirked as she cut Sakura's exposed back. As the blow was within range, Sakura instantly performed a backward somersault over Kanako. Sakura threw her chakra charged fist forward at full force as soon as she was back on solid ground. She yelled, "Okasho," as she delivered a monstrous blow to Kanako's back, striking him dead center. But rather than crumbling into a heap of bones as she had anticipated, Kanako seemed to break into millions of finger-sized crystal fragments. "What is this?" she asked. From what appeared to be a mirror made of her crystals, Kanako said, "Do you like my Suisho Bunshin no Jutsu? It works wonders. Come now, don't look so upset that you didn't get me. It's not very lady-like. I don't know who you are, but I can tell you came here for something. What is it?" Sakura said, quickly turning to face the older woman and extending her hammer in her direction. "That is all I will say on the matter," Kanako replied, shaking her head, "because it is my mistress's will to retrieve a valuable item from inside the palace." The statement, "That's all I needed to know," was acknowledged by Sakura. The woman's veins were visible through the cloak, but now they glowed with such an unsettling blue that her skin had gone completely white. "Let's see if you can face the power granted to me," she said. A voice exclaimed, "Shoju Giga," before the woman was attacked by what seemed to be 5 ink-based lions. Sakura yelled, "Thanks Sai," at him after spotting him perched atop one of his flying birds. When Sai said, "My pleasure ugly," she smiled. Sakura simply shook her head. He would undoubtedly go ahead and adopt one of his monikers during such a situation. She didn't like it, though. A huge spike of chakra appeared out of nowhere, and the ink lions were instantly defeated by what seemed to be some sort of shockwave coming from the location where the bloodhowler had been standing. She stood, or at least it was her. Her eyes were vacant and her skin had turned a deep blue. They had 2 pupils, and now they were completely white, radiating a reassuring yet repulsive aura that made Sakura shudder. Hell, Sai felt a chill go through her. A moment later, Sakura grabbed her hammer and rushed forward. "You're too slow, princess," Maria exclaimed, laughing as she used her sword to block the barrage of arrows that were aimed at her. Yugito yelled, "Raikyu," as she hurled an electrical ball. As she swung her sword to strike the approaching jutsu, the woman continued to laugh and exclaimed, "You're such a child." "Your mother was the same way," she said, striking it with her sword, which caused the lightning ball to abruptly return to its user. "She's giving me a reflection of my jutsu." When Yugito saw the lightning ball coming toward her, her eyes widened. She exclaimed, "Nairu I," as a huge blue crystal materialized all around her. The ball of electricity slammed against the barrier technique and discharged with a thunderous, pun intended, explosion of light and sound. Yugito sighed with relief, but as soon as Maria emerged from the smoke, she gasped. Now that her crystal was deactivated, Yugito was helpless as Maria hit her with a lightning chakra-covered fist. The woman yelled, "Sanda Sabaru," as she delivered the blow. When she saw Yugito's now still form on the ground in front of her after the dust had settled, she grinned and said, "Too easy." Maria's eyes widened in shock as it abruptly vanished in a puff of smoke, asking, "That was a clone?" "What?" A burning pain radiated from her back. At the sound of, "Hai no ya," the arrow in her back burst into a blaze. Yugito snarled, "That has to kill you," and lowered her bow. "How are you still standing? That was an S-rank jutsu I just hit you with. You should be dead," Maria said, getting to her feet a moment later as though the attack had not affected her in the least. "It should have, but it didn't. I was careless. I should have expected such a tactic from the daughter of Yatsuki Usagi. She was always a sneaky little bitch too," Maria said, laughing as the hole in her side appeared to close in a matter of seconds. "Shut up. Who the hell are you anyway?" "No, I don't care. You will die for talking that way about my mother," Yugito barked at her. "You're welcome to try, princess," Maria said with a laugh at her opponent. Without uttering a single word, Yugito vanished in a sudden rush of movement and then appeared in front of the Howler almost immediately. As Yugito slashed a monstrous claw of purple chakra, or flames, across Maria's face, her smirk turned into a full-fledged smile. With great speed, the Howler woman was flung across the countryside, slamming through trees and grass. As Yugito landed again on the spot where Maria had been standing just a moment before, she was blasted through a boulder and eventually stopped on the opposite side. But the Princess of Lightning was not the same person she had been a moment before. She was now completely encased in a purple chakra cloak enhanced with flame. She was on all fours, the pupils of her blue eyes now vertical slits, and the chakra had taken the form of a cat with a single swishing tail at the back. Maria stood, apparently oblivious to the 5 claw marks that now covered her face, and there was an echoey laugh. Before the pupils in her eyes disappeared, leaving her eyes empty, she licked her lips once to taste the blood dripping from them. The blue veins on her body spread out and covered her skin, giving the impression that she had blue skin, and the claw marks healed in a matter of seconds. Maria drew her blade and taunted, "Not bad, demon princess. You've turned into quite the Jinchuriki, little kitten." Yugito growled at her, "I said shut up," and then vanished in a flash of lightning. Just before Yugito slammed down on her from above, Maria smirked and leapt back. A moment later, the Kumo Jonin was on her once more, attempting to cut her with her claws. Maria deftly sidestepped the blows that were aimed at her, but she was caught off guard by the flames that slashed at her from the girl's chakra cloak. Maria was slashed across her stomach and sent flying through the nearby tree, but she got back up and continued to smile while looking at the girl in the Yuki cover in front of her. Maria told her, "Impressive demon. I will admit that, but that's useless against me," as the gash on her stomach was healed in a few seconds. The blood howler grinned once more and began to form hand seals. "Now I do believe I've had enough of this farce. Raiden. Raryuden no Jutsu," she said, raising her hand to the girl, and then a lightning-shaped dragon appeared out of it. The words, "Kindly die," glowed as Yugito abruptly began to concentrate a lot of chakra in her mouth. Nekomata Enden. The Kumo Nin's mouth erupted in a single, concentrated blast of pure heat. Both attacks detonated in a flash of fire and lightning after it struck the lightning dragon in midair. When Maria noticed Yugito still crouching on all fours and glaring at her, she laughed and asked, "You actually survived that?" "Meow," was the sound of shockwaves reverberating across the area where Maria was standing just a moment before Yugito leapt at her more quickly than the eye could see. "Raijingu Sanda." She slashed downward on her as her sword began to glow blue. The huge blue stream of chakra erupted from the blade and splashed across Yugito's Yuki-covered body with a loud explosion. The force of the impact blew dust upward, and Yugito's form was seen struggling to stand with the Yuki still covering her after it cleared. Maria pondered, "Still hanging in there, huh, princess? Not that it matters." Before turning, she called out to the other 2 howlers, "Kanako. Chan, Kyusei.kun. Fall back, we're pulling out." "Yes, milady," Kanako said with a sympathetic nod as she leapt back in the direction of her mistress. Kyusei complained, "Oh, do we have to? I was having fun here," as he also showed up by her side. Lee yelled, "I will not let you escape," as he descended from above them and jumped at them, spinning his legs in the direction of Maria's face. Konoha Daisenpu. The blow struck her face, but she didn't seem to even bat an eye. Before he could escape, Maria put her hand firmly on his chest and said, "You're an amusing little child." Lee screamed in agony, "My turn now. Raiden." Sanda, after being blasted back by what appeared to be a lightning bolt. As Sakura rushed to him, she yelled, "Lee.kun," with concern. She looked at him and thought, what the hell was that? Because the skin on his chest appeared to have melted off. Lee winced and grunted, I think it was pure lightning manipulation." Sakura hurriedly said, "Hold still, I'll be done in a moment," as her hands began to glow green. After Maria said, "Come Kanako. Chan, Kyusei.kun. We're leaving," the 3 vanished in a flash of lightning. Yamato remarked, "Rai Shunshin no Jutsu," after witnessing the technique. Naruto gave her an order, "Yugito. Power down. Now," and she turned to face him. "Yugito," he said direly. After lowering herself to the ground, the Kumo Jonin nodded in comprehension, and her chakra shroud disappeared. Naruto muttered, "It's one of those days," as he glanced down at his missing arm. Later, in the palace's conference room, Yugito inhaled deeply as Tenten assisted her in approaching Sakura. Naruto was already there, receiving care for his arm. Sakura tried to reconnect the arm and said, "Hold still, Naruto. You're lucky it was a clean cut or I wouldn't be able to reattach it." Luck had nothing to do with it. That guy the first was fighting knew exactly what he was doing. "I couldn't even get a decent hit in," Naruto stated to her. Sakura nodded, understanding the strength required to do this to him. "I can believe that," she said. "It's done, but don't use any chakra with it for at least another 3 days, she ordered. He trailed off, "Technically I outrank you so." Sakura simply laughed at him, "Don't push it. Unlike everyone else on the team I can actually give you an order since I'm the senior medical ninja on this team." Tenten questioned from her vantage point, "Who are those people anyways? They're no ordinary shinobi, that's for sure. We could barely even scratch them. At least with Akatsuki we know who we're dealing with, but this? It feels like we're blind at the moment," she said, leaning against the wall with her arms crossed. "I agree. I've never seen them before, but I know for a fact that those 3 we fought are on the cage level," said Yamato, nodding as he took a seat in one of the chairs. "They're called blood howlers," Yugito said, clenching her fists tightly. "They used to be a section of Kumo's Anbu, but they betrayed the village 18 years ago. I don't know the details, but they actively despise my entire family. I don't know why. They just do," she added, drawing attention from everyone except Naruto. Yamato raised one eyebrow and inquired, "Have you ran into them before?" "We ran into them 2 years ago. It wasn't a pleasant experience. I have to be honest, if I didn't get the drop on them back then they would have killed us both easily, judging by how those 3 were fighting out there," Naruto said when he realized she was unable to respond. "I see," Yamato thought, putting his hands beneath his chin. From one of the seats, Lee questioned, "So what do we do now? Although he would need to stop training for a week in order to just sit around and wait for them to come back?" His chest had healed. "Simply put, they wanted something here," Sakura said. "Whatever it is must be important. We should find it," she added. The team turned to see who it was when they heard a voice say, "I agree," coming from the doorway. "Koyuki. Sama," Sakura said, recalling her etiquette. "Don't start that, Sakura-chan. Just call me Koyuki. Koyuki. Sama makes me feel old," Koyuki said dismissively, waving her away. Sakura turned to Naruto and nodded, saying, "You've grown." Naruto exclaimed, "So have you. More beautiful, I mean," grinning. Koyuki noted that detail. "And you've become quite the charmer," he said. "Idiot," was Yugito's choice to slap him at that precise moment. "Hey now, that was uncalled for," he said, gripping his arm tightly. Looking at the display with amusement, Koyuki said, "Don't tell me, girlfriend?" "Fiancé actually," replied Naruto. "Really?" she asked, genuinely taken aback. "A lot has happened," Naruto said with a nervous laugh and a nod. Koyuki said, "Tell me about it. Where are Sasuke and Kakashi? I thought they would be here with you," oblivious to the two. Naruto said, "Sasuke. He turned traitor 3 years ago and betrayed us all. He's now with another traitor who killed one of our former leaders," since Sakura refused to respond. The words, "As for Kakashi Sensei, he passed on 3 months ago," caused Koyuki's eyes to widen. When the spring daimyo said, "I see, so that's why they're not here," he nodded pitifully. "If I may ask, do you by any chance know what those bloodhowlers wanted from you?" Tenten asked after a brief pause. With a solemn nod, Koyuki turned to face her and said, "Yes, I do know. It's right below this palace. We call it Marcreen."
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.